Sanskrit word Veena in ancient and medieval Indian literature had a broad and generic connotation, referring to plucked string instruments used for producing musical sounds. The instrument finds its earliest mention in the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, and other Vedic literature such as the Shatapatha Brahmanam and Taittiriya Samhita. The etymology of Veena is rooted in the concept of producing sound or Vani, that is, Vanyante iti Veena, and it was used to describe any instrument capable of creating sound, which is why Bharata, in his Natya Shastra, referred to the human voice as Sharira Veena. Hindu scriptures describe Narada as the carrier and player of the Veena. Catherine Ludwig, in her book on Saraswati, talks about an early prototype of the goddess which appears in the 2nd century BC Buddhist site of Bharhut in eastern Madhya Pradesh, holding a harp. Buddhist theology hails the Gandharva Panchashikha as a practitioner of the Veena. Hinduism also portrays many goddesses and gods like Matangi, Dakshinamurti, and Hanuman as exponents of the instrument. The concept of stringed instruments seems to have originated from early humans experimenting with the sounds produced by plucking the string tied to their bows. Scholars believe that the word Veena was initially applied to the bow-shaped harp, which is the earliest to appear in artistic representations. They point out that different types of harps, zithars, and lutes may also have been referred to as Veena in the Indian subcontinent. The yar, as mentioned in Tamil literature, is an example of an early harp-like instrument. With the passage of time, these instruments evolved in various forms, leading to the evolution of the Veena as we know it today. The two major forms of the Veena are the Saraswati Veena in South India and the Rudra Veena in North India. There are further variations such as the Chitra Veena and Vipanchi Veena, which highlight the structural and stylistic variations of this instrument. Musician and scholar Venkatamakin's significant work, the Chaturdandi Prakashika, delves into the diverse forms, construction techniques, and playing methods of the stringed harp Veena, showcasing variations in string count and fret placement existing before and during his time. Amidst these variations, the Saraswati Veena emerged as the most popular and widely practiced. Its prominence can be attributed to several factors. It was easy to tune, offered an extended range, and its fixed fret configuration allowed for the performance of multiple ragas individually or together in the same piece. The Saraswati Veena was actually developed in the 17th century by Govinda Dikshitar, a polymathic scholar and the father of Venkatamakin, during the reign of King Raghunatha Nayak in Tanjavur. According to Venkatamakin's records, King Raghunatha Nayak was the first to demonstrate the raga Natai on his newly developed instrument, utilizing the Chaturdandi or the four melodic features of the time: Alapa, Thaya, Gita, and Prabandha, as outlined in Govinda Dikshitar's Sangeeta Sudha. Consequently, this Veena was originally named the Raghunatha Veena in honor of the king. It is also referred as the Tanjavur Veena, reflecting its origin in the Tanjavur region. Among the Carnatic composers who were also practitioners of the Veena, Muthuswami Dikshitar, the youngest among the Carnatic trinity, occupies a central position. The very iconography of Dikshitar in popular imagination is incomplete without the instrument, as he is always represented with the Veena. While he mentions Veena in many of his compositions, his Bhairavi masterpiece, Balagopala, stands out distinctly as he addresses himself with the epithet Vainika Gayaka, an exponent of both Vainika and Gayaki styles. Although treatises record the coexistence of the two styles in the Carnatic atmosphere, Muthuswami Dikshitar stands out as an integrated practitioner of both styles. In India, the art of crafting an instrument is the culmination of generational knowledge and skilled hands passed down through centuries. It is a labor of love where tradition meets precision, and each instrument reflects the dedication and mastery of those who have perfected the craft over time. Let us take a closer look at the intricate, time-honored craft of Veena making, where centuries-old trees transform piece by piece and step by step into instruments of divine music. For this, we visit a quiet village called Nelamangala near Bengaluru, renowned for its skilled artisans who have mastered the craft of Veena making. The first step is to select trees that have stood the test of time. Only trees that are at least a century old possess the wood with the necessary strength and maturity.
ನಾವು ವೀಣೆ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಮರ ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಸುಮಾರು 80ರಿಂದ ಈ ಥರ 100 ವರ್ಷ ಆಗಿರೋಂಥ ಮರನ ನಾವು ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಅದು ಏನಕ್ಕಂದರೆ ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಅದು ಒಳಗಡೆ ಸೇಗ್ ಬಂದಿರ್ತೈತೆ. ಬಿಳಿ ಮರ ಏನಾದರೂ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಹುಳ ಬರ್ತೈತೆ. ಹಂಗಾಗಿ ವೀಣೆ ಅಧ್ವಾನ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಈ ಥರ ಬಲ್ತಿರೋ ಮರನ ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ.
When wood is white or light toned, it becomes prone to termites, leading to the production of inferior quality instruments. That's why mature trees are chosen. Here, we see large jack tree trunks perfectly sized for crafting the kudam or the resonator. Notice the sheer size of these trunks, carefully selected to meet the exacting demands of this instrument. The hollowing of the kudam is performed entirely by hand using a chisel, a slow, deliberate process with no use of electromechanical devices. This method, though time-consuming, is one internalized and perfected over generations of skilled instrument makers. The soundboard is the most crucial wooden component, dictating the tonality, amplitude, and richness of the Veena's sound. It is carefully marked and fitted for the kudam, reduced to a thickness between 5 and 8 millimeters, with its edges slightly thicker than the center to enhance the resonance. The fastening process requires immense pressure, as precision is key in ensuring the stability of the instrument. The dandi or neck too is hollowed out by hand, while the iconic yari, an intricate dragon carving, is sculpted entirely with manual tools. Today, some of these intricate designs are replicated in fiber, as not all artisans have the skill to achieve such detailed craftsmanship. Here, we witness the meticulous process of fastening the neck to the dandi and the dandi to the kudam, bringing together each piece of this instrument with care and mastery. Once the initial part of the instrument making is complete, we meet Mr. Raju, a master Veena maker with over 53 years of experience. Trained by a lineage of skilled artisans, he is one of the most sought-after Veena makers in Bengaluru, dedicating his life to this intricate craft. We've already witnessed how the basic skeletal structure of the Veena is formed, a foundation that remains unchanged throughout its life. Now, we turn our attention to the more intricate parts of the Veena, that sit atop the framework and require periodic maintenance. The anatomy of the Saraswati Veena comprises a primary resonator or periyakudam and a resting apparatus known as the chinnakudam, an elaborate fingerboard called dandi, housing 24 fixed frets or mettu, 7 strings, 4 on the fingerboard and 3 on the side, and their corresponding tuning pegs, beredai. These days, metallic guitar tuning pegs are commonly used instead of the traditional wooden pegs. The melam, or fretboard core, is crucial for the instrument's tuning and playability. Traditionally, it is made of melted beeswax either in layers or as a lump. Instrument makers have also experimented with various types of screw-based and plastic melams, but beeswax remains popular due to its flexibility. Frets, once made from traditional alloys like panchaloha for their superior tonal quality, are now more commonly made from brass due to cost considerations. These frets are embedded into the wax and can be repositioned if necessary. The frequencies produced at each fret can vary slightly between Veenas, depending on whether the makers used standard length measurements or tuned them according to their internalized concept of the note frequencies. The langar, a metal piece fastened to the rim of the kudam, is responsible for supporting the strings. A typical veena features 7 strings, 4 main strings and 3 talam strings. Some veenas incorporate additional sympathetic strings similar to a sitar, though this is less common. Jackwood and rosewood are also commonly used for the bridge. Mysore veenas use a stainless steel plate for the first string and brass plates for the others, creating a sharper tone, while Thanjavur veenas feature a single brass plate for all strings, producing a mellower sound. Jackwood, prized for its low oil content and excellent seasoning properties, is the preferred wood for veena construction. Over time, the wood turns from yellow to brown, contributing to the veena's visual appeal and tonal quality. Rosewood and teak are sometimes used for the top board or headpiece, offering aesthetic and tonal variations. Mysore-style veenas often feature a combination of woods, with jackwood for the kudam and rosewood for the top board. In contrast, Thanjavur-style veenas use only jackwood. Rosewood allows thinner top boards, but such boards do not support deep pulling and consequently deep gamakas. High pressure on the top board through the bridge can crack thin boards. Good quality veenas are usually light, indicating that enough wood has been scraped from the inside, allowing sound to resonate better. Older veenas are often better as the wood has had more time to season. Mr. Raju's workshop is not only dedicated to crafting instruments but also repairing older veenas. It takes about 20 days to craft a veena from scratch. Maintenance is critical to the instrument's longevity. Regular string changes and cleaning the melam are essential practices. Wax melams generally last around 5 to 6 years for professional musicians who play daily, though occasional players can extend this lifespan to a decade. Though veena making has seen several changes over the years, Mr. Raju's work reflects the delicate balance between tradition and innovation, ensuring that each instrument remains unique, much like the hands that play it. Over the past 150 years, Carnatic music has seen remarkable contributions to veena playing by several musicians. They refined techniques, introduced instrumental modifications, and shaped unique stylistic approaches, enriching the instrument's expression. Their innovations continue to influence the veena's role in classical and contemporary performances. Veena Dhanammal was known for her mastery of the veena and her dedication to traditional chaste music. She had a highly expressive gayaki or vocal style of playing the veena, with nuanced raga interpretations in a gamaka-oriented style. As a progenitor of the Dhanammal Bani, she influenced generations of musicians with her private soirees attended exclusively by connoisseurs of the art. Savitri Rajan and Rangaramanuja Iyengar were Vainikas who learnt the instrument from her. Karaikudi Sambasivayar co-established the renowned Karaikudi Bani, known for its balance between melody and a dominant right-hand technique. His style emphasized precision in plucking and disciplined handling of the talam strings. Tanam was given a lot of importance. It is said that even while resting in the afternoons, he would place the veena across his chest and strum it. He taught and influenced many prominent veena players, ensuring the continuity of his style. Alongside his brother, Karaikudi Subbaramaiah helped codify a style that became influential in shaping the future of veena playing in the Carnatic tradition. Ranganayaki Rajagopalan, Rajeshwari Padmanabhan, and Karaikudi Subramanian are some of the well-known Vainikas from the Karaikudi tradition. S. Balachandran, a self-taught veena maestro who transformed the perception and practice of veena playing in the 20th century. Rejecting conservative styles, he developed an assertive, highly technical approach using complex gamakas and intricate fingering to explore underutilized microtones and rhythms. He brought in pulling techniques from his mastery of the sitar. Balachandran was the first to use the contact mic on the instrument and revived the veena as a solo instrument, emphasizing its unique tonal qualities such as the drone strings and deep bass, often performing without mridangam accompaniment to highlight its nuances. A non-conformist, Balachandran critiqued the establishment and broadened the veena's appeal through recordings, talks, and concerts, ensuring its continued evolution in Carnatic music. Kalpagam Swaminathan was known for her mastery of the Tanjavur school's classicism and the Gayaki style, which emulates vocal music on the veena. Her playing was distinguished by nuanced gamakas and a deep adherence to traditional ragas. She was a respected teacher and mentored many disciples and was noted for her interpretations of Muthuswami Dikshitar's kritis. Her minimalistic yet profound musical expression is celebrated to date. Tumarada Sangameshwara Sastri was an influential veena maestro from Andhra. Known for his dedication and practice, he is said to have rehearsed any composition 1,000 times before taking it to the public. Vasa Krishnamurthy was a very unique Vainika from Andhra, who developed a highly individualized style that drew upon the nuances for both the Carnatic and Hindustani systems. His extended forays into Raga Alapana and Swara Prasthara was a notable exception to the sedate approaches of his time. He was known for his spirited and boundary-stretching manodharma that included a rich style of playing the tanam. Emani Sankara Shastri blended technical mastery with an expressive style. His student, Chitti Babu, drew upon the tutelage, adding his own innovative improvisations to become one of the most popular musicians of his time. His tone was extremely sweet and drew audiences that were rare for a veena concert. His dynamic, flamboyant performances expanded the boundaries of traditional veena presentation. K.S. Narayanaswamy was known for his refined, meditative approach rooted in tradition. Favoring a methodical lyrical approach, his renditions prioritized simplicity. Having learnt from vocal and veena gurus, his style was distinctly Gayaki. Trivandrum Venkataraman, Pichmani Iyer, and Jayashri Aravind are some of his disciples. M.A. Kalyanakrishna Bhagavatar, M.K. Kalyanakrishna Bhagavatar, and Desamangalam Subramanya Iyer were some of the important Vainikas that established significant veena traditions in Kerala. Veena Sheshanna was one of the most celebrated musicians of the Mysore court. Veena Sheshanna's father, Vidwan Chikkaramappa, was a great Vainika, a descendant of Adi Appaya, composer of Viriboni, the Attatala Varnam in Bhairavi Raga. He was known for popularizing Mysore's veena tradition and was highly regarded for his deep understanding of both Lakshya, practice, and Lakshana, theory. Veena Subbanna was another stalwart of the Mysore court and a contemporary of Veena Sheshanna. Subbanna, known for his technical brilliance, is said to have passed on some of his unique playing techniques to his disciple R.S. Keshavamurthy, making his style distinct. Mysore Doraiswamy Iyengar's style was marked by its grace, clarity, and intricate melodic patterns. He was a key figure in the Mysore Veena tradition, known for the distinctive touch and emotive playing that brought out the essence of each raga. Among several other Vainikas from Karnataka are Professor R.N. Doraiswamy, known for his academic and pedagogical contributions to the Mysore tradition of Veena playing, R.S. Keshavamurthy, who innovated the Gayatri Veena, a 24-string instrument which allowed for complex harmonics and greater tonal range, R.K. Srinivasamurthy and R.K. Suryanarayana, both from the Rudrapatna lineage, known for their unique blend of traditional compositions and innovation, M.J. Srinivasa Iyengar, Venkatagiriyappa, Veena Padmanabhaiah, and Veena Shivaramayya, Veena Venkata Subbarao, Veena Shrikanta Iyer, and Swaramurthy V.N. Rao, and C. Krishnamurthy. Coming to the contemporary scene, E. Gayatri is renowned for her highly refined and precise veena playing rooted in the vocal approach to Carnatic music. Self-taught on the instrument from a vocal pedigree, she drew adulating audiences as a prodigy for a considerable period of time. Her style is at once intense and classical. Jayanti Kumaresh, a niece of the violin maestro Lalgudi Jairaman, is a Vainika with a deeply emotive playing style, blending an intricate Gayaki approach with instrumental improvisations. Jayanti has also contributed significantly to global Veena appreciation through workshops and lectures, advocating for its appeal to younger generations. D. Srinivas is known for his dynamic and versatile playing style, blending traditional Carnatic music with a highly technically virtuosic expression. His style is marked by exceptional technical dexterity and a keen sense of proportion of gamakas. His attempts at freely disseminating technical nuances on the instrument deserves a special mention. R. Vishweshwaran is a self-taught Vainika from Mysore with a vigorously independent take on the playing style, and at 93 is the oldest performing Vainika today. His left-hand-oriented style eschews unnecessary plucking, thus enabling a high degree of conformance to vocal nuances. Several senior and young Vainikas of the current era hold a distinctive place in the musical landscape and continue to uphold and enrich the tradition of Veena playing, blending classical rigor with contemporary sensibilities. They have helped ensure the Veena's enduring relevance while captivating audiences with their mastery and artistry. The Veena has always been thought of a very difficult instrument to master. It is a very ponderous instrument, as you can see, and extremely fragile and sensitive. And because of that, it might have perhaps missed out on getting a very wide exposure like some other instruments. And there are even some orthodox views that consider the instrument as something very esoteric and mystical and exclusive, and as an instrument that mustn't be paraded and showcased like other instruments. And it is also tuned an octave lower than the violin or the sitar or sarod, and hence has a very weak output and is a very feeble instrument. Due to such reasons, there is a certain mystique that has developed around the instrument, and one often hears very simplistic explanations or ideas about what is possible or what's not possible on the instrument. There are many questions regarding the richness, the tonality of the instrument, and how it compares with other instruments. And there are many misconceptions that have developed around these areas involving the instrument. Its Rasikas are a niche fraternity, and this is also an attempt to take some of these issues and discuss them and perhaps enlarge the audience concerned. There have been many phases of introspection and experimentation that has led to very interesting changes in my musicality and my technique. And the beauty of it all is that it's a process of problem solving, and you come across a problem, you break your head over it, you try different things, you fail, and you come up with a solution after trying a lot, and then that solution is still temporary, as our own assessment of or our own definition of the completeness of the solution keeps evolving. The Veena offers a lot of scope when it comes to phrasal execution, and because it is a fretted instrument and it is less likely that we go completely out of tune because of the presence of the frets, it is likely that we prematurely assume a version of a phrase that we are trying as being accurate. But in reality, there is actually a lot of delicate sophistication that might be just a few steps away. For instance, in Dhanyasi, a phrase that I used to play as, say 6-7 years ago, now is na na na
the version of the phrase that I tended towards to needed me to build a certain mastery over a few types of jandai, for instance, in this phrase. Here, if we observe closely, the first jandai that I used is one that is a very quick oscillation between ma and second being an oscillation between the sadharana gandharam and ma, and then the last one, a spuritam, which actually has an embedded jandai, which is basically a very abrupt oscillation between. So there are actually three types of jantai that are involved in the same phrase. The first one, second one, now we saw the same phrase being played with two different techniques, one involving the full involvement of the wrist and the other involving a split finger technique involving a spuritam. There are some cases where the split finger technique is advantageous as it adds a certain crispness to the delivery. In Arabic, there are some cases though where the split finger technique might not be allowing us to be true to the anuswarams inside a phrase. For instance, take the first sangati of Orangasai. So this phrase is laden with a lot of interesting and very delicate anuswarams. And if you use the split finger technique to do, most of it is lost. And these are the cases where resorting to the wrist-centric technique is fairly advantageous. Here we saw the same phrase being played with two different techniques, one involving the wrist sliding across the frets more, and the other involving the wrist staying in one place and pulling on the same fret. And the pull technique and the slide, they both have their own advantages, and it is up to our own artistic sensibilities to decide which to use when. The option to use both the sliding technique and the pulling technique and switch between them rapidly and mix them is quite unique to the Veena, and this comes in handy especially when you want to play some very complex phrases. There are some techniques that have evolved around the construction of the instrument. For instance, if we compare the Veena with its Hindustani cousin sitar, the sitar seems to be better at preserving amplitude and hence there's more volume, but the Veena is better at preserving sustain, and that is especially evident when we see the rate of decay when we slide across the frets. And the rate of decay when we slide across the frets on the sitar is substantially more
than the Veena.
because of the fact that the Veena allows for sliding across the frets with reasonable sustain. Certain phrases like these are possible. On the other hand, you have an instrument like the sitar, which has much more tension in the strings and also a larger gap between the string and the fret. Because of this gap being larger, it is harder to retain a reasonable amount of sustain, especially when sliding across the frets. And hence, those kinds of phrases have been handled differently, largely by using more pull-based techniques. One of the major differences between a pull-centric technique and a slide-centric technique is the fact that the pulls are always mostly approximations, when on the other hand, the slides tend to be more precise when it comes to note placement. Both have their own place. One thing that is very unique with pulled phrases is that they are more lively and punchier, and they are also useful to add a certain tension in the voicing, and which is a modulation that is quite naturally created with the voice, for instance. The pulls on the Veena have been largely inspired by sitar and pioneered by Vidwans like Sri S. Balachandhran sir. An example of a phrase where the pull adds a certain tension and liveliness to the phrase might be now, the same phrase when pulled sounds like students might wonder how brikas can be played on the Veena. After seeing that you have to travel close to 2 feet to cover 2.5 octaves. And how do you combat the decaying sound when you slide across the frets? One option is to intersperse the plucks to avoid that decay. So now how do I play this in faster speeds? Because of the long fretboard of the Veena, we have to resort to techniques that optimize lateral wrist movement. And this is something that I myself am still working on. So here what happens is, instead of going linear all the way from here, there's almost 1.5 feet of, roughly eyeballing it, 1.5 feet of wrist movement. Whereas if I optimize by playing, I'm restricting the whole over a feet of movement to just maybe 3 inches. And this involves switching strings and playing the MPA, MAGA, MAPA in the second string. The Veena has a very beautiful and majestic lower range, and to club the bass string with the normal string gives a very heart-tugging and grand aural dimension. One question that we could ask ourselves is, what should really determine the limit of the gamut of sounds that can be produced on the Veena? Should the Carnatic paradigm set the parameters for this? Because there's a lot of very interesting and rich nuancing in other paradigms, and that would have remained inaccessible to us if we had restricted ourselves to a certain paradigm. There is a misconception that being adept in representing a certain paradigm accurately comes in the way and weakens the orthodoxy or the authenticity of representing another paradigm. And that is far from true, and in fact, it only gets enhanced. Representing a certain paradigm accurately on the Veena is purely a function of how keen our understanding of the unique melodic sophistication of that particular paradigm is, and how willing we are to tinker existing techniques or are open to discovering newer techniques if required. And that is what completely determines how accurately we represent that particular paradigm. Here are some phrases that are inspired by the ghazal tradition. This is a small example of how rich and versatile the canvas that the Veena offers us to paint in is. There might be some phrases that are inspired by the idioms offered by other instruments. A phrase that is inspired by the Nagaswaram might be a sarangi inspired phrase might be it's kind of very slippery glides, I think, are quite unique to the sarangi. And there are some aspects that are inspired by the sitar. For instance, cadence, which sound like. And as we saw before, a lot of the pulling on the Veena is inspired by sitar techniques and pioneered by Sri Balachandhran sir on the Veena. Pulls need not be restricted to representing simple glides between notes, but also can be used for more sophisticated phrases such as some deceptively simple phrases might require counterintuitive techniques to represent them on the Veena accurately. For instance, the phrase The notes that I use to play this phrase are actually similarly, for instance, this phrase in Kalyani actually involves playing on the notes, and there can be more than one acceptable technique for playing a certain phrase, each offering its own unique color. For instance, that has a deep gamakam on ga for the na na. There's another version where it has a slightly shallower, which is just an oscillation between the, and then can also be played a little differently. Instead of doing the mapadapa or the mapa of the mapadapa in, instead of that you could also do is a little crispier but lacks that hit on that pa. Also, when coming to the ga at the end is an option with a deep gamakam leading to ga, or a gamakam which is neither too deep nor too shallow, which is actually played on, right? How do we represent Sahityam on the Veena? We can play around with the position and dynamics of the plucking to try and simulate the different syllables of the Sahityam. Take the line from Varga Varga in Pantavarali, a composition of Sri Balamullikrishna sir. Alavila igamuhattal yen உள்ளமதில் தீரா துயருற்றேன் அளவிலா. So here, அளவிலா, a lot of open notes. Ihamuhattal is a closed syllable. So all this can be simulated with the plucking. For instance, also using the fact that going closer to the frets produces a warmer and rounder tone, and going away from the frets produces a shriller tone versus, and using the fingers to cut the vibrations whenever required gives us the opportunity to represent these syllables, and also the use of certain plucking techniques like the katri meter, for instance, which goes like. So if you observe there, I used the katri meter for representing the compound consonant train. So and a closed note here. The presence of frets on the Veena gives us the option to mentally visualize every semitone and microtone. And this is a skill that develops automatically when you practice the Veena, and particularly useful when you want to conceive complex patterns. the way the thalam strings of the Veena are used in the Tanam is very unique, and the way they allow us to enunciate the anum ta ta anum ta syllables is quite unique. The Veena, with its very rich soundscape, is very conducive for playing Tanam, and I generally like to explore a very sedate and reposeful start for Tanams. You can observe how beautifully the Veena lends itself to allowing one string to spill over the other string while the other string is vibrating. For instance, the Ma is still vibrating when the Da is being played, and when I play the Sa, basically there are three parallel tones running. So the Ma, the Da and the Sa are parallelly running. So which is a very, very interesting thing, and it gives a very haunting effect. There are many plucking variations that can be used to explore Tanam by not strictly adhering to the general Tanam gate of Anam, Tanam, Ta, and go beyond the Tanam syllable. And I like to explore anything that sounds musical to me in the context of Tanam, and it might include short spurts of speed, for instance. Sometimes even chords can make a lot of interesting oral contributions. Take a raga like, say, Dharmavati. Now, what are feminine and masculine phrases? Phrases which have a lot of intrinsic amplitude modulation and a lot of curves and delicate joinery may be perceived as more nalinam or feminine phrases. On the other hand, phrases which have less tonal modulation and are the ones which are executed with a very bold tone and which perhaps has an intrinsic jati to it may be perceived as more masculine phrases. This phrase, for instance, has a lot of curves, modulation, and is executed with a lot of delicate treatment. Whereas a phrase like has a lot of bold treatment with less of modulation and more of an intrinsic jati to the phrase. Now, wasn't the Veena able to produce both the masculine and feminine phrases equally well? So it is a misconception that the Veena is limited to soft feminine delivery or one way or the other. There has been a tradition of Vainika Gayakas, that is the Veena players who sang along. The reason that I started singing in my concerts was to basically let the audience know about what was happening lyrically. And there might be some spots in a song where the lyric is very poignant and I want the audience to know that. Or there might be even a melodic section that is very evocative, which I might want to sing and convey the emotion through. And sometimes I might feel like singing at situations where I feel that the voice can bring in an energy that the Veena might not be able to at that juncture. The Veena is a very feeble instrument, and for someone to truly appreciate the nuances of the playing, they have to sit very close to the instrument and listen very keenly because it has a very weak output. Dynamic mics, they have a frequency response which is not enough to represent or capture rather the frequency range of the Veena, which goes almost from 50 hertz to over 10 kilohertz. And they also have inadequate gain. Condensers, on the other hand, they have a lot of leak, and because of that we can't use them in live scenarios, though they have a much better frequency response and gain. Because of this reason, we have to resort to contact mics or piezoelectric pickups or magnetic pickups. Magnetic pickups and piezoelectric pickups being the two main variants. The magnetic pickup picks up the vibrations only from the string and completely negates the contribution of the soundboard or the resonator. The soundboard being the primary source of the Veena's sound. I like to use a fully acoustic setup, which involves sticking a piezoelectric contact mic onto the soundboard. People wonder if the Veena makes it difficult to produce fast phrases at a pace that is quite supported on other instruments. Due to the playing length being much longer, it is obviously going to be much more difficult to achieve the same pace. But it is possible with sustained practice to push the limits of speed on the Veena. There has been a misconception that the Veena is not very conducive to laya-based explorations such as Ragam Tanam Pallavi, Trikalams, Nadai Swarams, interesting chorways, etc. But being a percussionist myself, I feel that this concern has been overstated and that it is quite possible to explore in this direction on the Veena. रथम् विपिनान्तरङ्ग शयन